is planning to deliver a letter to President Biden's climate czar, criticizing the White House's decision to temporarily freeze new liquid natural gas export approvals. Join us now, Alaska Republican Senator Dan Sullivan. It's not John Kerry anymore, Senator. Who is it now? I don't even know who. I don't. You know what?
It's Podesta. By the way, good morning,
Podesta.
Joe. And by the way, and he's supposed to be confirmed by the Senate. We passed a law that said any czars have to go through Senate confirmation. You know, I think Podesta's ignoring that, but that's a whole other story.
We need a new name. That's from a country we're not really, very happy with right now.
Exactly.
Actually, with the way some of them act, maybe that is a good name. Figure it out for me. What I've been told, the bottom line is a pause doesn't hurt the industry that much, and it allows, and we know what it is, it's silly season. We know exactly why the Biden administration did it, because they can throw a bone to the climate lobby and maybe shore up some of those votes for November.
You're 100% right. This is, once again, the far left wing of the Democratic Party driving American energy security and American national security policy, and that's the huge mistake. I was over in Munich recently for this Munich Security Conference, co-led a delegation of 12 U.S. senators. And I will tell you, our allies in Europe, the Germans, so many others, were apoplectic about this pause. The idea that somehow this is not going to harm our interests is completely wrong. And I'll give you a really strong example. Almost on cue, after this pause was announced, Russia, Qatar, Iran were saying, hey, we will offer long-term LNG contracts to America's allies. So this notion that somehow it's not hurting our national security is wrong. The Deputy Secretary of Energy testified a couple of weeks ago, hey, our allies were, quote, fine with the pause. Our allies in Europe, our allies in Asia are not fine at all. And it undermines our national security at a very dangerous time on one of the most important strengths we have in America relative to the dictatorships who are on the march, and that's American energy. And you're 100% right, Joe. They have done this for domestic politics and election politics, but not national security or energy security.
I don't even think you can point to the rationale. If you had to ask John Podesta what was the rationale for this, would he say, I think it's just leaving fossil fuels in the ground. Isn't that all? Even though natural gas is probably the cleanest way to do it, even though if you don't use natural gas in some of these countries, they're just going to have to use coal. So it's not even logically consistent with what you're trying to come. But what is it? Is it just a knee-jerk LNG is a fossil fuel? So if we pause, we're leaving it in the ground, so we're fighting climate change. Is that really the rationale?
It is the rationale. When the president announced this pause, he said we're doing this to, quote, address the climate crisis, the existential threat of our time. I actually think dictators on the march like Xi Jinping and Putin is a much bigger threat of our time. But here's an important issue. Even if that's what they're talking about, climate, look at this chart. I like to bring this chart. I don't know if your viewers can see this chart. It shows from 2005 to 2020, the United States, by far, right here, we are the leader in emission reductions by far of any major economy in the world. And you see China and India at the other end of this chart right here. Their emissions are going through the roof. Why are we the leader? We are the leader because of the revolution in the production of natural gas. So even if if their concern is about emissions, stopping the export of clean-burning American LNG to our allies in Europe and Asia will harm global emissions. That is a fact. So even their rationale that they state is completely wrong. This is, again, throwing a bone to the far left during an election season. That's the sole reason they did it.
They might still say that we should keep it here or it shouldn't be exported, or they'll throw in some economic reasons as well. But we know that energy is a global market, and we export, we import, we export. Oil goes out, it comes in. Luckily, we're now exporting a lot of, able to export a lot of fossil fuels since we're the biggest producer again, which is in spite of, I think, a lot of what the administration has done. It's because of price. If you get to $80 a barrel, producers are going to produce. That's all it is. It's in spite of.
But I'll make one final point with regard to our allies. Like I mentioned, when I was in Germany for the Munich Security Conference, we met with the Chancellor of Germany, the Foreign Minister of Germany. 2 years ago, 50% of Germany's industrial base in terms of energy, power generation, came from Russian gas. 50%. And within 2 years, they completely got off Russian gas, which most people didn't think they could do. And they did that because of American LNG. And so now these countries are saying, wait a minute, you have helped us, America, but at our time of need, you're now going to cut us off. And as you know, in this business, you need long-term certainty. And this is the exact opposite of long-term certainty. Okay. We are once again driving our allies into the arms of adversaries like Russia, Iran, Qatar. It's a huge mistake.